This is All India Radio. In the weekly program Current Affairs, now we bring you a discussion on air pollution causes, effects and control. The participants are Mukul, former UN diplomat and environmentalist, and Dr. Arvind Kumar, Pulmonologist, Medanta Hospital, Gurugram. The moderator is Omvesh Upadhyay, AIR Correspondent.
India's capital city, Delhi, experiences some of its worst levels of pollution during winter. Several factors affect the air quality of the national capital region, like burning of farm stubble, factory emissions, traffic fumes, and general weather patterns. The residents of Delhi NCR are compelled to breathe in hazardous air. People are facing serious breathing issues with the deterioration of air quality with each passing day. And to discuss on this topic, we have Dr. Arvind Kumar of Medanta Hospital and Environmentalist Mr. Mukul. Every year we witness a surge in air pollution during winters in Delhi NCR. Mr. Mukul. According to you, what are the major factors that contribute largely to the problem of air pollution in the national capital region?
Delhi is unique in the sense that it is surrounded by mountains, and during the winter season the air quality deteriorates because cold air sinks to the ground, wind patterns change, the pollution is not dispersed. So whatever is generated in the area in and around Delhi settles down into Delhi. Now this is not unique in the world. For India this is unique. But we had the same situation in Beijing and in Los Angeles. The difference is that in both Beijing and Los Angeles, which had the same geographic and meteorological conditions and temperature patterns, but a lot of the pollution was industrial pollution. Now it is relatively simpler to deal with point sources of pollution, that is pollution coming from a factory, a power plant, because you can use technology to change the composition of the pollutants. But where you have dispersed sources of pollution, like stubble burning in a vast area in this period, and vehicular pollution, which is called non-point sources of pollution, it becomes very difficult. And technology or regulation is not the answer, but behavior change is the answer. For example, more metro, more buses, odd-even arrangement for cars, carpooling. And for stubble burning, the situation is even more behavioral and economic, because there is a very small window for farmers to cut the old crop stubble and plant a new crop. This is irrigated area. They want to take the maximum crops to get an income, which is normal. Now the problem in Punjab and Haryana is also unique in a sense that a lot of depletion of groundwater takes place for paddy cultivation. Now we went into paddy cultivation as part of policy to increase food grain production, and paddy is very water intensive. Now the Punjab farmers are advised not to use groundwater but to plant with the onset of the monsoon, so that delays planting. When it delays planting of paddy, then they have a very short window, roughly just a month or less than a month, to remove the old stubble and plant a new crop. Now they have found that to remove the stubble using labor or machines is time consuming. It costs money. So they burn and they replant. So this has become a regular feature, and we need to seriously think through how we are going to deal with non-point sources of pollution in and around Delhi.
Definitely, sir. And when we talk about that, the air quality is deteriorating and a lot of technical details are in talks. For our listeners' knowledge, I would like you to please answer that. What is this fine particulate matter 2.5 and under what weather conditions it suddenly increases in the atmosphere?
The particulate matter is a loss of dust. Some dust comes from the Thar Desert. Some dust comes from construction activity. Some dust comes from the ground which is not covered by grass or trees or concrete. So there is a lot of dust in our conditions. What happens in winter, that in addition to this particulate matter, you have certain particulate matters coming out of the fumes of the diesel cars. That is why there is a restriction now imposed on diesel trucks, old diesel trucks particularly. And France, for example, has wanting to phase out diesel cars from Paris. So the characteristic of diesel is that the smoke or pollution that comes out reacts with the atmosphere at a certain temperature and becomes ozone, which means that it becomes toxic. It becomes into a chemical reaction which makes it toxic. and that is what causes irritation in our throats and in our lungs. So here we have a situation that you have some irritation because of dust particulate matter and some irritation because of the ozone in the atmosphere, where the pollution from a diesel engine at a lower temperature reacts to and gets converted into ozone. Now that is what we call smog. And you can notice the difference when there is no sunlight. Dr. Guleria, who was in the AIMS, has just advised people, particularly the old and those who are suffering from infection, that if you step out only during sunlight, because in sunlight again the chemical composition changes. In the period just before dawn and dusk, where the temperature is low, that this chemical reaction takes place, you step out early in the morning at 6 o'clock, you see some kind of a whitish smog, and that is very harmful. So what we are finding is that this problem is really limited to the winter months, November to about February. Right now we are talking about health issues, about construction and stubble burning. Very soon we may need to talk about planes not being able to land or take off from Indira Gandhi Airport. So that becomes another feature as it progresses. As the situation gets worse, in these 3 months, approximately 3 months, we have a severe problem of a mixture of non-point sources of pollution, climatic conditions, our geography, and the fact that we have at least 3 sources of pollution which are all non-point sources, that is dust, vehicular pollution and stubble burning.
Dr. Kumar, I would like to know that in what ways does severe air quality affects human health?
So the severe air quality is actually a medical emergency, affects health of all those who breathe in a very, very brutal way. So I would like to start answering this question by first addressing what age does this effect start. The startling revelations in the last few years have come that the damage actually starts even before we are born. So when a pregnant mother in a polluted city is breathing toxic air, the chemicals are going through her lungs, into the blood, through the placenta, into the developing child, and it starts its harmful effects from there. So that's first piece of information, that the damage starts even before we are born. When we are born, as soon as we take our first breath, if the air quality index is 500, if the PM 2.5 is 400 plus, it's almost like equal to about 15, 20, 25 cigarettes. So that's the kind of air the child inhales from the first breath. It damages his or her windpipe, the lungs, lining of the lungs, and these toxins that get absorbed into the blood and starts impacting all organs from brain to toe. And this damage continues through the childhood, into adulthood, into elderly age, till our last breath if we continue to breathe polluted, toxic air. So effect starts in pregnancy, effect continues throughout our life, and it impacts every organ from brain to toe. The effects can be classified into immediate. For example, these days everybody is reporting red eyes, itching in the eyes, burning in the nose, soreness in the throat, metallic taste on the lips, breathing difficulties. These are all immediate effects. Then the short-term effects, children are noticing a lot of asthmatic tendencies. Adults are also noticing congestion in the lungs. Those who already have asthma or chest problems are reporting severe deterioration. Elderly people are coming with pneumonias. So these are all short-term damages. But more sinister is long-term damages, which includes decreased IQ development in children, premature hypertension, heart attacks, brain attacks, lung cancer, and even diabetes and obesity are now being linked to exposure to pollution. So if you look at the spectrum, there is a very long list of diseases, disability, which occurs secondary to pollution, and very sadly, it's responsible for millions of premature deaths across the country.
Dr. Kumar, I would like to know more from you about this, because there is a lot of talk about the particulate matter 2.5. So what and in what ways does it harms the human health when a person continuously breathes in this PM 2.5 air?
So we have two types of toxins in the polluted air. You have the particulate matter, which is divided as PM10, which is 10 microgram particle, to PM2.5, which is 2.5 microgram, PM1, which is 1 microgram, and less than 1, ultrafine particles. And then you have various gases from carbon monoxide to oxides of nitrogen, oxides of sulfur, and various other gases. Now these gases go in and come out, but the fine particles, which is PM2.5 and smaller than that, these fine particles go up to the terminal part of the lungs and they tend to settle there and thereby are responsible for a chronic long-term damage. So those particles settle down there, they keep releasing the chemicals on their surface, and most of them are silica. So that in itself is also a toxic material, and it is the presence of these particles that I'm seeing in a lot of, because I'm a chest surgeon, so I operate on 3 to 4 cases of lung diseases every day, and now I see deposits on the lungs of even teenagers. And the reason is that they are breathing polluted air and these particles are getting deposited in the lungs. Once deposited, they are there, they cannot be cleaned, and they cause long-term damage to the lungs, and the chemicals also go to the blood and cause damage to all organs of the body.
So when we talk about how diesel vehicles are contributing in smog, and then that will ultimately contribute to more severe problems like we will be not able to breathe the right air for our health. Yesterday, the air quality index of Delhi reached extreme serious, or we can say a severe stage. So under this, the Delhi state government had implemented some restrictions on private diesel vehicles, and as you told us about that, how harmful the diesel vehicle smoke is. So do you think these restrictions on private vehicles will help? And if yes, at how much extent?
You see, we have to see the particular situation we are in, which has no parallel in other countries like Beijing or Los Angeles, which have similar problems because of the stage of development and the socio-economic conditions that we are in. Now, it is easy to say that we will not allow trucks to come in unless they are carrying essential commodities. But Delhi is a very big center, and every day it depends on fresh fruit, vegetables, industrial equipment, goods, services to be brought in and trucks to go out. We had said earlier that this can only happen at night because of the traffic problem. But then at night, where the fossil fuel, the diesel fuel, because of the low temperature conditions and wind patterns at this point of time, make the problem even more serious because it is concentrated at that time. And in the morning when people get up, they find that there is heavy smog. So we are solving one problem, but we are creating another problem. When we say that diesel private vehicles will not be allowed, then the experience of Beijing has been that people buy more cars, one with an odd number, one with an even number. Now there is enough wealth in Delhi for people to start thinking like this, that most households or a lot of households which have 2 cars will have odd and even number cars. So it does not help. Basically, again, we have to ask a very fundamental question, that this is a problem that takes place every year for 3 months. What can we do throughout the year or as a long-term measure to reduce this problem? Having been the first Joint Secretary of the Pollution Control Division in the 1990s, I can say with a relative level of confidence that it is very difficult to control old sources of pollution which relied on old technology. When we are buying new cars today, they are relatively pollution-free or very low pollution. Hybrid cars are coming in. Electric vehicles are coming in. So very soon when the transition has taken place, when more than half the vehicles are electric or hybrid depending on battery source or electricity as a source of propulsion, the problem will come down. It is in this transitional period that we are facing a problem because of the historical decisions which we took, the old technology which we have. Similarly, it is possible that cropping patterns may be thought to be changed. If we can find something that gives the same amount of money to the farmer and is not prone to pest or other problems, the farmers will shift. So that calls for more research, but a different kind of research. Can we look for a paddy variety which takes less time to ripen? Then the cutting season or the burning season can be lengthened. We know that in October, the wind pattern is such that it will not affect us. It is only in November, December, January that the wind patterns are such that lead to settling of the air in this part of India. So I think we need to look at very different solutions to what works in Beijing, Los Angeles or any other city, because our situation is completely different.
When we were discussing about that, how this is affecting our health, Dr. Kumar, we have seen a rise in cases of cardiac arrest during winters. Does the deteriorating air quality have a relation with it?
So it's a proved fact that whenever there are periods of spike in pollution, few days to few weeks later, all hospitals experience at least 5 to 10 times increase in the cases of heart attacks as well as brain attacks. So higher incidence of brain attacks and heart attacks. Heart attacks leads to cardiac arrest. These are known facts which all hospitals and doctors experience few days to few weeks after the periods of spike in pollution.
Mr. Sanwal, when we talk about what ways we can bring restriction and solutions for this deteriorating air quality, yesterday the 8-point action plan as per stage 4th of graded response action plan was applied. Could you please explain what this 8-point action plan actually is?
Basically what the 8-point action plan says is that let us cut down on the sources of pollution which can be easily or more easily cut down. Stop construction, restrict diesel vehicles, close schools, particularly primary schools. Now, what happens when you look at this as a total picture? If primary schools are shut down, a lot of the bus traffic in the morning is cut out. But the children remain at home. They are still smelling the same air. They are still breathing the same air. Construction work. Now, what happens to the labor? What about someone who has planned construction in a manner, has got the material, and is not able to do the construction in the next 2-3 months? There are delays. There are projects where delays will take place, have cost a lot of money. People will seek exemption. Similarly with the cars. We say that essential commodities can be allowed inside. But what is essential? Very soon we will find a lot of people are coming inside. The point I'm making is that yes, these are emergency measures which should bring down the level of pollution. But it has to be seen how much lower this pollution will be, say tomorrow or day after. My own feeling is, and that is what had been discussed earlier also here, that some of these steps need to be taken before we come to 500, so that we don't come to 500. Once we are in 500 and then we start taking some steps, the effect will take a couple of days. By then the air conditions or the weather conditions change, and as it is, the pollution level comes down. So the second point I wanted to make was, one was the historical pollution or the technology that we have been adopting in the past, very difficult to change. The other is that we have to recognize that we can never have very good in Delhi at this time unless we move out of vehicles completely and get into electric vehicles. And that will take time. So over time things will change. The question is what happens between now and then. I think the key point there is we need to build up a monitoring system that will alert us before we are likely to get to 500. We know about stubble burning, we know about daily vehicular use, we know about construction. The only thing we are not sure about is the weather patterns, the wind patterns and the temperature patterns. If the monitoring system could tell us maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe 2 or 3 days before this is likely to cross 500, and then these measures are implemented, we will remain around 400, 350, 400. That will be tolerable. People will accept it. People will realize that this is a long-term problem. So the aim has not to be to go down to 200 or 300, but maybe somewhere 350, 400. Let us make sure we don't cross 350 over the next 3 months. And that I think is manageable. But if we say we want to have very good air quality over the next 3-4 months, I think it will be very difficult. And it may not be needed also. 350 is tolerable given the conditions that we are in.
Indeed, sir. It is about we finding a way to make the air breathable. Dr. Kumar, when we talk about the times we are living in winters we are facing this air quality issue, but past years were not very good because we faced pandemic. And this question is for the COVID survivors. As we have seen that after contacting COVID, the lung capacity decreases. So what special measures would you advise to COVID survivors?
So COVID survivors who had significant lung involvement during their COVID period, which was not severe enough to cause death, but there are a lot of people who are on oxygen, those who have compromised exercise ability, those who have moderate involvement, but when they exercise, they get fatigued, and mild involvement. So all those people who have diseased lungs post-COVID, for them, this is a very bad time as far as their lung health is concerned, because this kind of air will do lot of damage to their already damaged lungs. So they should stay indoors, they should use masks, they should use air purifiers in their rooms. I am not at all a proponent of air purifier as a solution to air pollution, but for these people who are already having diseased lungs, I would strongly recommend air purifiers to be put in their rooms so that there is no further damage that occurs to their lungs. They should not be exercising outdoors, and till the time the pollution levels comes to little better level, they should probably be inside the house exercising precaution and taking their medicines regularly in consultation with their treating doctors.
Dr. Kumar, seeing the rise in cases, be it respiratory related or cardiovascular, does the hospital authorities do any special management to manage these cases?
No, there is no special management. It's just that as this pollution season approaches, the management knows that there is going to be a sudden increase in the number of children reporting to your casualty with respiratory illness, number of elderly people requiring admission to ICUs, paralysis cases, heart attack cases. So you know that you are going to be short of beds, your doctors are going to be stretched because there are too many patients. For example, in our hospital, Medanta, not a single ICU. We have a huge ICU system, over 300 beds, but right now all ICU beds are occupied because there has been an increase in the number of such cases. So hospitals do prepare for these by, putting people on duty. But the thing is that this is like a reaction. More important as a doctor for me is to take measures to not let this happen. Prevention is where I would like to see the focus shifting rather than letting it happen, people falling ill and then taking care of them in the hospital.
Mr. Mukul Saval, when we talk about that the air quality is deteriorating, it is not only affecting us on a daily basis, but also it affects several industries. For example, we can say that tourism industry is also very affected by this, because when we talk about that the quality is decreasing, it is not only for Delhi NCR, but in recent past we have seen that many cities like Lucknow, Kanpur, Agra are also experiencing this. So how do you think that is this affecting tourism industry, and what are the ways that we can at least try to not experience that bad air quality in smaller cities compared to Delhi?
You see, you have made a very important point. Agra. Now, the pollution control system in Agra started something like 40 years ago, where the concern was yellowing of the marble of the Taj Mahal. The diesel yard, the railways using coal were discontinued. Factories in Firozabad, the glass factories were made to shift to gas. Other restrictions were imposed around the area of the Taj. Crematorium was shifted, electric vehicles were introduced, vehicular traffic was not allowed, trees were planted. But that takes care of the pollution at that point of time. As development takes place further, as cities expand, more vehicles come in, this problem will keep growing. So the problem is there, has been there, the nature is changing, but the impact is changing even more, which we are not calculating. You have made a very important point by focusing on tourism and economic activity. When we look at the cost that this is imposing on society, we look at the cost on the human being. We don't see the cost that falling tourism numbers impose on the country as a whole. The income that is generated from tourism, the income that is generated from factories is huge. We don't take that into account when we say how much money we have spent for stubble burning or what is the amount of money we have spent on other issues like public transport and even the metro. So that becomes to the third point, that in addition to the old technology, in addition to setting our target at a reasonable level, we need to look beyond pollution to see the economic and social activities in the entire area, how they are affected, what changes are taking place in them, and how a holistic plan can be prepared, which is not just a pollution plan, but also a social and economic plan that will change the economic activity or give certain incentives for certain kind of economic activity, so that the individual, but also the economic activity that can take place. And in that manner, I think we can bring about better behavioral change or better change.
Dr. Kumar, just to get the answer of a general query, that is it only about mass or taking right medicines or staying at home, or one can also take some special diet to counter the pollution that one is breathing through his lungs?
So there is no specific anti-pollution diet. I would like to, through your huge audience, I would like to send out a clear message. There are a lot of off-the-market, off-the-shelf products which are being touted by advertisement as panacea for air pollution problem. All I would say is that you should take healthy diet, which should be a good mixture of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, minerals. So you should take various, the vegetables are good. You should take fresh home cooked food, junk food, stale food, food which has been stored for a long time, food which has a lot of chemicals added in it, artificial flavors and all. Those kind of junk food should be avoided. So fresh food in the house, lot of green leafy vegetables, high colored vegetables have antioxidants and help in recovery. Dry fruits like cashew nuts, almonds, etc., they also are rich in antioxidants. Fresh fruits and plenty of water. So a normal healthy home food with good amount of water intake is what will prevent you from falling sick. But I am not saying that this is an anti-pollution diet. There is no known substance which can 100% prevent damage to your lungs or other parts of the body from breathing polluted air, no matter what the advertisers might be saying.
Thank you so much for answering this and rightly pointing out that there is no specific anti-pollution diet. Dr. Kumar, Delhi state government has ordered to close all the schools right now. So we already know that due to pandemic the schools were closed from past years, and again it happened this time. And we also keep in mind the deteriorating air quality. I want to ask you about this, Dr. Kumar, that how much does this deteriorating air quality affect the health of children, both in physical terms as well as to their mental health?
So children, as I said in the beginning, are most vulnerable because they are shorter in height, and which is where the pollution levels are highest. So they get maximum exposure, number one. They breathe faster than adults. So their per minute intake of toxins is more per body surface area than adults. They have growing tissues which are more susceptible to the effects of chemicals than adults, where the tissues have reached maturity, and they often tend to run, play in schools, which further increases their respiratory rate, thereby increasing the amount of exposure to the toxins. So all these things put children, and their immunity is comparatively lower. So they become a special affected group as far as air pollution is concerned. And when the levels are so unhealthy as they are these days, I think there is no other measure but to keep the children at home and not let them go to the school. But I must clarify that this is not a long-term solution. This is a knee-jerk reaction, temporary, immediate solution to the problem, the mess that we are in.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arvind. Mr. Mukul Saval.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on air pollution, causes, effects and control. The participants were Mukul Saval, former UN diplomat and environmentalist, and Dr. Arvind Kumar, Pulmonologist, Medanta Hospital, Gurugram. Moderator was Omvesh Upadhyay, AIR Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.